Item number 5, Ms. Washington.
Item number 5, Land Development Code Text Amendment, Architectural Design Standards, Minor Modifications, DEV 2011-053.
Thank you. Good evening. Tom Whitenauer, Planning Division. At the June 23rd meeting, the Planning Board recommended adoption of architectural design standards. It went on to the City Commission, which were adopted September 7th. Part of your motion in the June meeting was to have staff prepare and come back with an appeal process of some degree to the architectural design standards, and that the degree of appeals had some concrete parameters. Staff took your recommendations and already have a recommended appeal process. It's really a little less, and we didn't want to use the word appeal because there are other appeal procedures. What we found we could call it, already had a location in the Land Development Code, minor modification, which is in Article 4, Section 14, subsection 14.2. So it's a convenient place to put what ended up being just a short section. Since architectural design standards are largely based on dimensions, and Clarion is preparing the LDC rewrite, and they have a section where they're allowing some degree of modifications using percentages. We kind of wanted to draft something that would easily fold into the LDC rewrite. So one of the planning board members suggested a percentage, which worked very well. So what we did was we just referenced the sections of the architectural design standards that refer to the dimensions, and at the end of the section we're saying minor modifications to dimensional standards shall not vary by more than 10%. And it has some qualitative criteria above that that we can also apply. That would allow staff, when we're meeting with project teams, to review their projects, and if they are coming close to some of our lengths and setbacks, whether it's a wall or roof, occasionally there is, a 2 to 5 foot difference that we could sway in the review, and let them proceed to get a permit without coming to the planning board. If they still can't, and that's not an automatic appeal, that's not an automatic minor modification approval. They still have to meet the qualitative criteria. So it's not a given. If they still can't meet that, and if they want to pursue it further, then they can apply and pay the fee and advertise public hearing to come to the planning board, just as it currently exists. So this is an intermediate process for staff to have some flexibility to the code. And I can take questions.
Any questions of the staff? Anyone in the audience care to speak for or against? Board, your comments. This is what was brought before us last month, and you had about 3 or 4 different changes that you wanted to make in it at the time.
Motion to approve Land Development Code text amend to architectural design standards, minor modification, DEV 2011-053.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, Large-Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendments, E-Zone Master Plan, DEV 2011-054.
Thank you. I'll also address item 6 and generally item 7 at the beginning of my presentation, and then we'll focus on item 6. If there's questions on 7, Reed Berger's here. As we told you at the last planning board meeting, with the E-Zone and the City Commission approval of the E-Zone Master Plan, staff received direction to start to work into our various documents a way to implement the master plan. There'll be a lot other work, but the main documents to amend are the comprehensive plan, the land development code, and the redevelopment plan. We're working hard, and we're overlapping to some degree. That resulted in some handouts in your package tonight. That's just sort of the nature of a tight schedule, so we apologize for that. But we can walk you through that. For the record, what this first item, item 6, is a request by the Planning Division for approval of a large-scale comprehensive plan map amendment, establishing and overlaying the E-zone future land use map designation to approximately 142 acres of land within general boundaries and interior streets, known as the entertainment zone, which we have been calling the E-zone. The general location is in the tourist core area, the Ocean Center, Peabody, Auditorium, Boardwalk, and Main Street. And the E-zone master plan is a revitalization project. Last meeting, we took you through some slides to show you the concept of the form-based code, which is only one small part of the plan. It deals also with events. It just is very comprehensive, which is the reason it is so thick, and it took over a year to prepare it. It isn't just looking at the physical conditions of downtown. It looks at the real estate, the marketability, public amenities. It's going to be a useful document. Our part in it is, in the comprehensive plan, is actually fairly minor. What we're suggesting, and we'll have the Department of Community Affairs reaction to this, it shouldn't come as any surprise to them. They've read about it in the news over the year or two. But it's an overlay land use tool that we would like to employ. And so it's not very invasive to the comprehensive plan because it's not rewriting a lot of regulations. It's just putting in place references to the E-zone plan, and we're attaching it as supporting data and analysis. So our approach is that it's an overlay, and with the data analysis, part of the success of the project, which the plan references, is it makes the commitment both to city officials and staff, but more importantly to property owners and investors in the area, that the city's made a commitment to go with this innovative approach. Property owners can continue using their existing land uses and zoning. If they elect to go to the E-zone plan, once this is approved through several months of procedures, including land development code changes, as I mentioned, if property owners have the option of making proposals to comply with the E-zone plan. So it's a flexible process. There'll also be some streamlining to that. It'll receive shorter review time, but with that, almost similar to the architectural design standards, there's a high level of expectation on the design of the building, the form it takes, how it treats the street, as far as being more pedestrian friendly than it might otherwise be. So it's a balance, and project teams will weigh that and decide which way to go. So what we did, we took the E-zone plan and our comprehensive plan, and we tried to identify where we needed to make references to the E-zone plan and make some policy changes. What we did was include some cross-references with footnotes. That's something that the redevelopment department did that we thought would be useful also, and ended up with a set of amendments that are, I didn't count the pages, it might be a dozen pages of policy changes that we want to have you review and take action, possibly to forward to the City Commission for transmittal to the Department of Community Affairs. Then they, since this isn't going to be the area of state concern, it's probably going to be exempt from their full review, and we'll just get a comment as such. We may find another amendment internally needs to be made, and then adopt it and send it back, and then go from there. As I mentioned, there's some replacements or some handouts for you tonight. That reason, as I mentioned, the redevelopment area board of Main Street and South Atlantic met a few days ago, and we took their comments on our comp plan package. They had to review it also, and we quickly had minutes prepared to bring to you. That's in your package. And then staff had to react to what the planning board recommended, and we put that in your package. Really, there's only 3 points that the redevelopment board made to our comprehensive plan amendments. I could go through those now, or I could first take your comments and try to respond to questions, whatever you like.
Does anyone have any questions at this point? I only had one, and for clarification, when you said a property owner has to declare whether they want to be a part of the E-zone or maintain with current land development code. Is there a time limit when they have to do that?
Once,
When does that decision by a property owner have to be made?
once everything's on the books and available, they can make the decision at any point. That they can approach staff and.
I don't think they really have to make a call or say that. It's when they come forward to do development, they'll either follow the E-zone or they'll go through the other process.
Okay. That was my only question.
All right.
I had one question. So what was the significance of using the 1981 figures all through there?
Well, was that through the feasibility study? I know, that must have
It's
been
the
the
blight
blight
study.
condition. That was what we had on the books.
No, I
That's what's on
understand, but I just wondered why there was a significance in that.
Are you referring to the comp plan or the redevelopment plan?
I'm looking at the figures in there that are showing
That's the redevelopment plan you have.
redevelopment.
Oh, redevelopment. In the redevelopment plan, the redevelopment area was established in 1980 or 1981 is when they first initiated it. So we have to keep, and that's when the blight study was done, and so we have to keep the blight study. But the thing, what we did in the plan is we moved it to the appendix, but it needs to stay there because that's essentially the blight study that established the criteria for the redevelopment area.
Never have to change that? I mean, if the place had really gone well and everything had...
Well, then we'd be done.
Still would use the...
Well, then we'd be done with the redevelopment area. I mean, the point is, you have the blight study that established, and that was the criteria, and then if you've accomplished all the goals of the redevelopment area, then the theory is you're done with the redevelopment. You're done, and you've accomplished your redevelopment goals. We've not accomplished them yet.
So that's why that.
Yeah, and I believe through the EAR process, we usually review. Because I remember when we went through the EAR process, we reviewed, and I want to say either the consultants that did some of the early work, we reviewed where we were in terms of relation to those redevelopment goals. So those, I forget how often, is it 7 years? Every 7 years you do the EAR. Oh, well.
Okay, thank you.
I know.
I just have one comment, and it really is a technical comment. It's on the E-zone map in the master plan, E-zone, where on page 23, where the Surfside Village and the Seabreeze neighborhood map designations are reversed.
Yeah, we can.
And since both neighborhoods are mentioned specifically, for somebody who doesn't know, it might be useful to make that correction.
Right.
We did.
What we are going to do in Appendix A, there will be a map showing what is the Surfside neighborhood.
Okay.
We did that at the redevelopment board. We suggested that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, I think you also wanted to make a correction on policy 1.4.4 where the footnote instead of 19 should be 10, and those would,
Yes,
I think that was something you wanted to do too.
that's
And then
correct.
if you would discuss with us these items. that
Okay, thank you. Similar to tonight, the redevelopment board
Are we
had
back
to.
in the comp plan now? What are you
Yeah,
discussing?
we're in the comp plan
Okay,
amendment.
I just want to make sure we haven't
Okay.
left that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So the redevelopment board, after they took quite a while and were thorough in the review of amendments to the redevelopment plan, they finished that, then they went to our amendments to the comprehensive plan. They had three comments, or three changes that they made into a motion and approved to us. Staff took a look at their recommendations and formulated a response. The minutes, and they are the draft until they have their next board and they're approved, are in your file as a handout, Agenda Item 6, staff handout. And then what I'll go over for just a minute is labeled Agenda Item 6, additional information. So it looks like this. It's got some red text at the bottom.
Yes, okay.
And what we tried to do to make it easy so you weren't going back and forth between the minutes to the amendment package, back and forth, as we just copied whatever they said onto the onto this. So I think we can just operate off of this 2-page handout. The 3 points they made was, one, this was more, I think, an issue with the redevelopment plan because there's a lot of references using footnotes to changes that were made in the redevelopment plan. I like that they did that, so I carried that into the amendment for the comp plan. And so anyway, when they said, why don't you delete the footnotes and work that somehow into the body of the text so there aren't so many footnotes, when they got to us, they said, do the same for the comp plan. Well, we have a lot fewer footnotes, and we like to keep our policy short, so we recommend just leaving the footnotes in place to refer to where the E-zone is referenced. In the second point that the redevelopment board made was revise, this is on page 23, revise neighborhood B, issue J, policy 1. It was a good suggestion that staff agrees with. The policy, when we first wrote it, had a sentence with some bullet points under it. As we revised it, we found we didn't need to list, the detail. So on the next page, in yellow highlighting is what we're accepting as a recommended change, which is just deleting 2 words and inserting another one. Delete the following and insert some. Okay. Page, and the third and final comment that they had on page 72, the transportation element, they passed a motion to exclude the roundabout from a policy that we wrote, which was a copy of a statement in the E-zone plan about using a roundabout as a traffic calming device. So in the redevelopment plan, as you'll see in the minutes, and as well as the comp plan amendment, the board wanted us to exclude roundabout. The planning division, we disagree with that recommendation, and I want to elaborate a few points why. The E-zone plan includes 20 big moves, they call it. They're kind of big ideas and other suggestions throughout the master plan of how to change this area. We're trying intentionally not to keep the status quo. We want to do some creative, innovative things. And so this team over the course of a year or so, which had disciplines of a lot of members, of staff, planning board members perhaps, and property owners, developed the plan and kind of infused a lot of ideas. It isn't the intent and probably isn't feasible to do everything on that 20 list, big move list that's in there. There are ideas to be considered in the future. We don't feel it's appropriate this time to start chipping away and taking items out without really vetting and testing how it affects other parts of the plan. Removal of one item out of the 20, it kind of sets a precedence to start taking other things out and scrutinizing those. So we would recommend leaving that in there. Really, there's that project in particular, roundabout, it's going to take a lot of steps and a lot of scrutiny from DOT, the state, the county. So its success, whether it's built or not, will have a life of its own. So staff recommends leaving that in there at this time, respectfully to what the development board suggested. But those are the only 3 changes that they recommended and staff responses to those. I can take comments on those 3 points now, and then we'll move to the redevelopment plan amendment.
Yes, since we don't have anyone in the audience for a comment on this, we'll move to the board. Board, your comments.
Okay. If I could, I just I'm
sorry, just a minute. We do have.
we do have comments. Okay. All right.
John.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue. Yes, I did put in a green slip.
Sorry.
A couple of problems with this. Let me start off with you're all assuming that this is a good document. I'm sure you all have seen it.
I have no idea what that is from here.
Those are the E-zone diagrams, phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what they're planning on putting in the E-zone. And in it, they missed a couple of minor things that I consider, if they can miss that, they can miss a great deal of things, one of which is the Ocean Center expansion. They were here for 3 months and never bothered to notice it. As a matter of fact, they have it as vacant land with a walkover going through it. They were unaware that there's a cemetery on Peninsula, and they have put buildings on it. Those are little minor things that I think are major. If you can miss a cemetery and consider it a vacant lot and you put buildings on it, then there are other things that are missing. The Main Street Board met, and not until after they started discussing this did they get the packet that you all have. During the meeting, they were given the packet, half the group was given the packet. They had to adjourn for 10 minutes, discuss it. So those 4 people had 10 minutes to look over 36 pages. To say that it was a discussion is a little bit short, because some people can't go through 36 pages, read it all, memorize it, digest it, and then discuss it. It's a big much. They were told they had to do it that night because it was coming to you all. So I believe that it's a little bit short-shifted to say that the Main Street Board went through it. I mean, Tracy had it. She digested it like a vacuum. She understands everything, but a lot of the other board members did not. So I'm asking you, when you go through this, to go through it piece by piece. So if there's anything there, the roundabout is a big thing, and the roundabout was a problem because of the flow of traffic. There are several members that have been overseas, seen the roundabouts. They are not easy to go through. Besides the cost of $5 to $10 million to acquire the corner, it is the ability to keep our east and west connected. The flow of traffic would stop if you can't get past there. So the roundabout, I know they want to sit there and say, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen, but a lot of times you put this stuff in here, and it's in like Flint. It says you recommended the roundabout, and it's not necessarily what you may or may not want to do. I've gone through your document. I've got about 14 things, and I know I've got only 3 minutes, but there are a lot of things in here. I'm worried about Surfside Village. They mentioned Surfside Village. Are they only talking about Surfside Village that's in the E-zone? If that's the case, then please stipulate it, because Surfside Village worked very hard years ago, somebody in here knows, that they want to be residential, and 20 units per acre is not residential. They fought to get residential. They want to be residential. So if there's a way of making sure that it's only that area that it's in the E-zone, I'm sure it would make a lot of people happy. Very quickly, Halifax on page 4, you're talking about streetscape lighting, etc. In here, they had projected going from the Halifax River. They never got to the Halifax River. They stopped at Hollywood. So from Hollywood to the Halifax River was never done. The landscaping was never done. Are you pulling this out saying that we will never do this in the future or whatever? We're not going to tie the streets together? I'm worried about some of the wording, because I know you're saying that this is what we're going to do and we hope to do. We hope to tie it together. There was a time that the Main Street CRA had hoped to change the zoning. I'm not quite sure you're all at that point. I would hope that you change the zoning, because it really is not business professional anymore, or automotive at that end. I mean, there's still automotive there, but it's not something that you want in the future. Assembling property, Gino brought that up. I hope you all understand. Their word on page 3, assembly of properties, that we don't assemble properties to go to private businesses. Additional parking, there's about 1,200 parking spaces there now. We had this problem when you put in the parking garage up by my house. They were debating whether to put 900 parking spaces, 1,200 parking spaces, 1,500 parking spaces. They decided on 1,200 parking spaces, but what they didn't realize is they were taking out 1,180 parking spaces and putting back 1,200, which means there was only additional 20 parking spaces for the neighborhood. So are you doing the same thing here with the 3,500?
John, are you reading from the comp plan, or are you looking at the redevelopment?
This one.
We're
okay.
not anywhere near.
I didn't want to miss it. So
all of this.
All right.
Okay.
So when it gets to your next one, those are
I'm like,
considered
this is
spoken.
not making sense.
But there are a lot of things in here when you get to the next one that you understand. Please look at it carefully. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Are there any more questions of the board, of the staff?
Could I make some comments?
I was really pleased with the footnotes and the easeability of being able to go through. I don't know how you had just a few to do and noticed that they had a lot to do. But that sure was helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if I can make just a couple of comments. First off, what the appendix is the E-zone master plan. It's not the data analysis. And when you look at the master plan, you will see the Ocean Center, for instance, everything's correct. There's nothing going through it. It shows the expansion. The only thing that was a problem were the maps that John mentioned. We're putting the map in Appendix A, so that's actually not a problem. Those footnotes that you liked, that was the first thing that the board did, proposing that, because you would lose those otherwise, that they actually end up in the body of the text above. The sum, just because that way you don't have to put a list, which in there. Now, the transportation element, I'm sure you haven't really had a chance to read the minutes. What actually happened at the board, we were trying to keep things very general, hitting some of the big moves, but that one seemed to, all people could think of was how awful Seabreeze Circle was, and have those memories of how awful Seabreeze Circle was. Well, a lot has changed since then in terms of traffic planning anyway. What I suggested was, rather than have anything about the traffic circle in there, that the language be, and it would be on your page 72 of the comp plan under that policy, construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan, Appendix C. That leaves it very general, up in the air. They can vet everything. That lost by a 5-4 vote. So it wasn't a unanimous thing to do this. And I had suggested that the board, rather than pick this one thing out of all the traffic that we hate it and take it out, that they actually do that as a separate motion to bring forward that, you know, this is something that they really don't want to see happen. But that they instead made the change that you see here. I would still personally like us to just do construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan, Appendix C. That just leaves it all, whatever works, what doesn't work, no one's picking or choosing.
Let me comment too, in that I was at that meeting, and in the discussion, they weren't just in the traffic element. They were talking, that wasn't really the intent. The intent is to use this E-zone plan as a guide, and each of those specific things like that will be discussed in more detail and analyzed to see cost-benefit, what's good about them, what's bad about them, and a decision on each one will be made at that time. None of that really happened on the traffic circle, and we were a little surprised that it came up and it happened, but I think, you know, our intent is only to keep the concept from traffic, from the details of the E-zone plan at this point until they are vetted on a one-by-one or on a basis where you can really analyze it, to look at the pros and cons, and then decide, yes, it's a good idea, or no, it's not. There will be a lot of those things that will fall out through that process, but to exclude one now, that's where the precedence really comes in. We'd suggest that nothing specific be thrown away at this point. Remember, the whole concept of this E-zone is doing nothing isn't an option. We need to do something, move forward. The City Commission said at the night they approved the resolution moving forward, none of them were happy with all the details in the E-zone, but let's move forward and we can work through the details as we proceed.
All right.
So bottom line is what Tracy said of tweaking this, so long as it isn't excluding anything from that, we're comfortable with that. That was staff's concern. I wanted to make sure that was clear.
And tonight, in terms of what would have to happen, this was only a recommendation by the redevelopment board. So the planning board would actually have to now incorporate these suggestions the ones that, that are on this handout,
And
or make changes to them in our motion?
Yes.
Okay. I just...
Any other comments? Are we ready for a motion?
Okay, motion to approve, where is it? Large-scale, thank you. Large-scale comp plan amendment, E-zone master plan, DEV 2011-054, with the additional recommendation of putting the footnotes into the body of references where needed, the change in language on page 23, Neighborhood B issue, to include the word some as noted in our handout, and page 72, the transportation element, to have it read construct improvements consistent with the construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan appendix C.
Second. And did you get to the word excluding?
No, I actually just took all of that out. Just construct traffic improvements consistent with the E-zone master plan. Then you just leave it very general.
Gotcha. Was there a second to that? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes.
My board's going to hate me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We're right on. Item number 7.
They're not going to be happy.
Item number 7, Main Street Redevelopment Plan Amendment, E-Zone Master Plan, DEV 2011-072.
All right, thank you. I'll introduce this. Depending on the level of questions, we might have Reed Berger or Jason Jeffrey answer your questions. What the redevelopment division is asking staff and the planning board to do, it's a very straightforward question. Are the amendments they're making to the redevelopment plan consistent with a comprehensive plan? So they're not asking, and I don't know that they need us to get deep into their redevelopment plan changes as we do with our comp plan changes. That's the question they're asking staff and the board. Staff has determined it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And part of the reason there are a lot of footnotes and a lot of red changes in here, as I heard their presentation, they saw this as an opportunity to start bringing some policies from the comprehensive plan into the redevelopment plan, in addition to the E-zone references. That's why there's so much red in there. And part of the reason there's more footnotes, too, to show board members where those came from. I went into the redevelopment plan and similarly took some of their policies into our amendments. So it was sort of enjoyable to work together with the redevelopment division and start to trade information and show consistency. Again, a handout that's in your package are minutes from September 14th meeting. Redevelopment staff took the recommendations from the redevelopment board and worked very hard and quickly to integrate the changes into their redevelopment plan, and that's agenda item 7, staff handout number 2. So that's what this.
No, we have handout number 1. I don't.
This number 1 and 2.
Number 1 and 2. I might have said 3.
This one is number 1.
How do I not have that, you guys? I'm the only one with. Oh, here it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I couldn't possibly go through the minutes or the changes, but staff maintains that the redevelopment board and their redevelopment plan amendments are consistent with the comprehensive plan. We'll take questions and see where we go from here.
Well, I think we did have a speaker on this yet. Mr. Nicholson. You spoke, you addressed it? Okay, that's good.
Actually, let me
Board,
just make sure.
any questions, any comments? think basically our duty here is to affirm that this is, does meet our land development code requirements.
And I would like to address one thing Mr. Nicholson said that I checked out where the source of it was. It does say, there makes some reference that in the Surfside Village, there's a 20 unit per acre limit. That's not anything new from the E-zone. The Surfside Village, which is a land use category, and when you look at the residential 1, 2, and 3, there's different densities allowed in there. And when the redevelopment department, in a couple of cases, they needed to condense some of the policies just for length. That was copied in there, so that's why that appears. It maintains the same residential 1, 2, and 3 in Surfside Village, so that didn't change.
Actually, I was
Just
gonna-
to
yeah.
clarify,
Yeah.
the comp plan has now one of the omissions that it has. It doesn't actually specify what the units per acre in the Surfside is. When you look at the Surfside land use, it overlaps with some RP zoning, which allows 20 units per acre. So this is consistent with the level 2 residential. This doesn't change the specific zoning of what we know as the Surfside neighborhood, which is the RDB 6 zoning, which does allow single-family homes at 6 units per acre and 12 units if they have multifamily. So there's a little bit of overlap between what is the Surfside land use with other zoning districts that do allow up to 20 units per acre.
And plus, in the comp plan, you have your future land use, which lays all of these out just like they're laid out in the redevelopment plan on page 14, the level 1, level 2, level 3 residential. And since this is talking, because we did talk at length about this too, we wanted to make sure that didn't happen. Since everything includes a map of where the E-zone is, and then the one change that was made at the comp plan specifically mentioned where the bungalow part of it is in Surfside, it doesn't change the underlying zoning. This is just where the E-zone map is. It doesn't affect all of Surfside. So we were very careful about that when we looked at that language.
There's still a 2-block strip within Surfside Village that's straight underlying RP zoning, so that's...
And that's where the bungalow part is.
Yeah.
It's specific to that.
That's the specific underlying
Yep.
zoning.
Yep.
Yeah, and to answer John's concern on that is the changes in the comp plan only apply within the boundary of the
Of the
E-zone.
E-zone.
It doesn't apply to everything that's in the redevelopment element or the redevelopment area.
And
Any
I will.
other comments?
I was just going to say I was really glad because the board did work very hard on coming up with language that they felt reflected what needed to be reflected in the redevelopment plan, area plan. And the staff was great in coming up with some revised language with that as well. And so I'm really happy to see that that is our handout tonight since I finally found it, because it does reflect what the board wanted to see happen in the plan.
Well, a lot of work by staff on putting these together.
Make a motion, we approve Main Street redevelopment plan amendment, E-zone master plan, DEB 2011-072.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Moving on to other business, Downtown Blue Road Redevelopment Area Board. Mrs. Washington.
The Downtown Blue Road Redevelopment Board met September 13th. They had a total of 16 cases this month, which included graffiti on walls, junk cars, clearing of car lots, noise complaints, OCC license, and sign violations. We also reviewed the concept of the Williams Square, which will be located 200 South Palmetto Avenue. The applicant, Jack White, requested to amend the planned development RPUD. These were highlights from it. As he explained it to us, the project itself, they were going to encourage rooftop gardens. All lots that will be sold with the agreement that height limits for the buildings are limited to 55 feet high, which is 4 floors. Lots will be 25 feet by 30 feet wide. They will have a homeowners association. On the properties facing Magnolia Avenue will be required to have 3 stories on all homes. The properties facing Palmetto Avenue would be 2 stories on all homes. Okay? The project was consistent with the redevelopment plan, therefore approved. We discussed the revised redevelopment grant programs. There was a need to focus, these were highlights, a need to focus on incentive programs, recruit retail and restaurant businesses, encourage home ownership. Currently, there are 26 vacant storefronts in the area. That's 3.5 blocks of Beach Street. We discussed proposed changes to the residential grant program, and some of those included limit the grant to homeowners' properties, focus on exterior facade improvements, ensure all improvements comply with design standards as part of the application. We discussed, or it was presented to us, proposed changes on the commercial grant program. Some of those changes limit commercial facade programs to visible exterior improvements. Only taxable properties would be eligible for the grants. Focus on the incentives. Focus business incentives on retail and restaurant recruitment. The recommendations were approved. Land Development Code rewrite was another item that was discussed briefly. We were informed of a meeting for September 27th at 6 p.m. at City Hall that's going to help us with this. There were questions on what they wanted. The members of the board wanted to look at the criteria for being a member of that board, and then we were given an update on redevelopment projects in the area. We had board comments, and we adjourned at 2:10. Yep, very busy.
Midtown Redevelopment Area Board?
I'm sorry, wait, could I just ask, the project that was approved, who was the developer?
Jack Scott was the one that gave us the information. Is Jack Scott the developer?
Jack Scott or Jack
Jack White. I'm sorry, Jack
Okay,
Scott.
I
Jack
just
White.
wanted, okay, I just wanted to, okay.
Jack White.
All right, thank you.
I don't know where I got Scott from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Benjamin?
Okay, Midtown Redevelopment Board met September 13th at 6 p.m. at the City Hall Commissioners Chamber. Roll call. Approval of the minutes. Staff reports. Code Enforcement Lopez, he gave an update on his projects that was a great improvement to some of them. The action item was DV 2011-043 site plan approval, and that was pertaining to the store on Martin Luther King Boulevard. It was continued because of big discussion that they didn't know anything about it. That board did not know anything about it. So I assume it's continuing to the next meeting. I'm not really sure. And they had a discussion on the prohibit uses, the LD text amendment. And Mr. Bright brought in pictures of all of the convenience stores, car washes in the Midtown area. Also, he gave a summary from Code Enforcement and how many times the law enforcement has been called to the areas. And if anybody would like to see the package, here it is. Okay, and then Midtown Master Plan, they want Professor Hoffman to come and give the City Commission an overview of it. They also did the redevelopment project update. FEMA was out to the police station about the flood area and telling people to get the flood insurance. Mr. Bright gave a report on that. I think there was one more thing about the grants. They talked about the grants, and in the Midtown area, the main thing was they wanted no matching funds. So it will be continued for them to go back because they wanted to add air conditioning was taken out, a painting project, and they wanted roofing. They wanted those 3 items put back into it. So it was continued also to the next meeting. Captain Capri said things are looking good in Midtown as far as law enforcement is concerned. And he also said that they encourage convenience stores in the Midtown area. And I didn't understand that, so I had to call the chief to find out why would people say something like that when you help close down the store. And he said it was just a mistake. He shouldn't have said that. For public comments, now we're having a lot of people come to the board meetings and they're making comments and stuff. Good, bad, indifference, whatever. Board members said what they had to say and the meeting was adjourned. And of course it was as long as usual.
You talkers. Main Street, I think we've already heard most of yours.
Well, you've heard half of ours, that's for sure. And Ms. Washington covered a lot of the grant stuff, though there are 2 things I'll hit. Actually, our first action item was a conditional use for the temporary parking lot that's been temporary for 20-plus years. But now it actually, now, the one that we all know, just immediately south of the Hilton, A1A in the Boardwalk area, Ocean Avenue. But now it actually came forward for a site approval following the changes that were made a month ago, 3 months ago, whenever, for parking lots. And that was approved, and there's going to have to be landscaping and some upgrading of that. So you get 3 2-year extensions. And 6 years is it's maximum. So that was approved. The E-zone, you heard about that, and the comp plan amendments. The revised development grant programs, one of the things, we did pretty much the same thing with business and residential, hitting homeowner occupied, taking out, or making sure it's only exterior. But one of the things that we did do, we kept the commercial facade grants for the entire Main Street South A1A redevelopment area, but the business facade grants and the lease subsidy, we target areaed the E-zone to help jumpstart what we all hope will be happening there. So that was a major change. And the chairman, who wanted the meeting to last for 2 hours, when he saw our agenda, figured, well, I'm not going to make it the first time, but he did do it in 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we've got through a lot of information and did a lot of work in a very short amount of time.
Good. Public comments?
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue. 2 things on clarification. You brought up about games of chance. My question is, does that include if an existing bar owner or whatever, if they have a pool table, or if they put in an additional pool table, or is that just new?
It's just
permitting?
new businesses.
Okay, so Main Street is not affected by if they exist already.
Right.
Okay, because they're planning on something in the future, and I didn't know. Okay, and secondly, on height limits, with regard to your plan, it says height limits according to the LDC. Will the E-zone be able to have higher than, because in the past they've always had the north tower of the Ocean Walk is taller than had been allowed? Will we be allowed to have higher height limits in the E-zone than is permitted in the rest of the city?
There's 2 answers to that. If someone determines they don't want to follow the E-zone plan, they will follow the comp plan and our rules exactly as they are. If they choose to follow the E-zone plan, they would come in under those rules and be evaluated that way.
Have we done those rules yet on the height limits?
The farm-based zoning code will be the next thing that'll come
So
forward.
those gentlemen, there are several people I've been talking to that own property. They're worried about the height limits. So they will have the option. And you haven't done that option yet on the height limits.
Well, they always have the option to follow what we have today. And
If they're not, if they're going with the E-zone,
If they follow the E-zone, the form-based code will establish how that height will be evaluated.
correct. Okay, and then for information on, I'm presuming that the way you voted, because what happened at the Main Street Board is there's a lawyer there, and you know how lawyers deal with words, and his fear of wording caused him to vote against the ordinance. There were 7 people in favor of taking out the roundabout, 2 people in favor of keeping the roundabout. When they voted, it was 5-4, one because he was a lawyer, secondly because he was concerned with it did not belong in the way it was being voted on. So I wanted to understand it was a 5-4 vote, but in favor of this roundabout was 2, and against the roundabout was 7. Most of the comments, I know Rick gave you the impression that there were lots of comments. It boiled down to 10 to 15 minutes just about the roundabout. All right? It's not the idea that it was in passing and, oh yeah, by the way, but it was an intense conversation on the roundabout. Thank you.
We'll still have a shot at commission. Okay. Staff comments?
The primary thing I want to bring up is the Clarion and Associates will be here Monday. The advisory board meeting is at 6 o'clock downstairs in our large conference room. Everyone's invited, but especially the advisory board members. We need you. Tracy's an advisory board member and will be out of town. She has given us some comments and will give us more shortly. And then Tuesday night is it'll be a public input meeting in this room for people that couldn't make Monday or want to come and have a dialogue directly with Clarion. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. If other people that are interested in the Land Development Code or have insomnia, certainly come to those 2 meetings.
6 o'clock also on
Yes.
Tuesday. Board member comments? Janet, you've been awfully quiet tonight.
I missed a month, I'm out of the loop.
Actually, yeah. One thing I would like to say, it was a 5-4 vote. You never know someone's heart. You don't know why someone ends up voting the way they do. But I will say Ms. Doan, Mr. Libby, and myself were 3 people very strongly against having that language in it, so that's already more than 2. The vote ended up being what it was for whatever reasons that people voted. And if you look at the comp plan, which while we disagreed on this amendment, the comp plan, the way it came forward from the board was actually unanimous. So you could say that everyone supported the roundabout. What it was everyone supported making the changes to the comp plan. So I just wanted to be very clear on what our board did and what the discussion was. And I won't be sending you guys postcards, but I'll be thinking of you when I am out hiking the Olympic Mountains in Washington State. Yeah, watch out for bears.
Let's say wear a bell or something like that so they hear you coming. Well, just to follow up on that a little bit, I'm pleased with what we did tonight in sending forward the city commission. I think we did all this right. With that, meeting adjourned.